for over 20 years. I've seen accidents, storms, and some strange things on the road. But there's one night I still can't think about without getting chills. It was late summer, around 2 in the morning. I was hauling a refrigerated trailer full of produce, running eastbound through the Nevada desert on Highway 50. If you've never been out there, let me paint a picture. Miles of dead straight asphalt cutting through a black sea of nothing. No streetlights, no houses, just sagebrush, distant mountains, and an endless horizon. You can drive an hour and never see another car. That night, the CB radio was silent. For anyone who doesn't know, that's the little box truckers use to talk to each other on the highway, share road conditions, call for help, or kill time on long runs. Not a single voice crackled through it. I'd switched off my music an hour earlier too. Most drivers say silence makes them sleepy, but for me, it keeps me sharp. Just the hum of my engine and the steady thump of tires over expansion joints. About an hour into that stretch, I spotted headlights in my side mirror. A single car, far behind me, closing in. At first, I didn't think much of it. But the car didn't pass me. It just hung back there, maybe 200 feet, perfectly pacing me. 10 minutes passed, and my gut started nagging at me. I flicked on my CB and asked if anyone else was running eastbound on 50. Nothing but static. Out there between Fallon and Ely, that's normal. No other rigs, no lights, just desert. That's when I noticed another set of headlights ahead, cresting a hill. As I got closer, that car slowed down, way down. I eased off the throttle, stomach tightening. Then a third vehicle, a beat-up pickup, came roaring up on my left, hugging my lane. I caught a glimpse of 2 men in ski masks through the passenger window. Finally, it clicked me. I was boxed in. The car behind me sped up, tailgating hard, high beams blinding me in the mirrors. The one in front crawled even slower. My pulse hammered in my ears. They weren't just messing around. They were setting me up. I slammed on the jake brake, slowing so hard the trailer groaned. The car behind me swerved into the shoulder, trying not to rear-end me. That was my opening. I dropped gears, floored it, and swung my rig into the opposite lane, horn blaring. The pickup on my left tried to cut me off, but I stayed steady. For a few miles, it was a high-speed chase through nothing but black desert. Headlights swerved in my mirrors as they tried boxing me in again. I knew this road well, long, empty stretches with the occasional sweeping curve. Up ahead was one of those curves, banked and unmarked. Most drivers slowed to 30 for it. I figured I could push it at nearly 50 if I handled it just right. I killed my headlights for a heartbeat, hoping they'd misjudge my speed. My rig leaned hard into the curve, tires screaming. In my mirrors, chaos. One of the cars overshot, spinning out and vanishing into the desert scrub. The others slammed brakes, gravel spraying behind them. I didn't stop. I kept my foot glued to the floor and didn't let up until I reached a tiny, all-night gas station outside Austin nearly an hour later. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pump fuel. When I told the attendant what happened, he gave me this long, grim look and shook his head. "You're lucky," he said. "Those guys, they've killed people out here before. They wait on these empty stretches. No lights, no cameras, no one around for miles. By the time anyone notices a wrecked truck, it's stripped clean. This road's a hunting ground at night. Locals won't even drive it after dark, unless they have to." He glanced out toward the black highway beyond the pumps, his voice low. "You're smart to keep moving. Out here, stopping can get you killed." The next day, I filed a report with the highway patrol, but there wasn't much they could do. No plates, no good descriptions, just headlights on an empty highway. To this day, I don't run that stretch of 50 without backup on the radio. And I never ignore that feeling in my gut, because that night, it saved my life. There's something about lonely highway rest stops in winter. They feel wrong, empty, silent, like time stops the second you pull in. I learned that the hard way one bitter January night on I-40, somewhere between Oklahoma and Arkansas. It was close to midnight when I finally decided to pull over. I'd been on the road road since sunrise, hauling east out of Amarillo, Texas, cutting through Oklahoma and heading toward Little Rock. By that point, I'd already clocked close to 500 miles, and my eyes were burning from fatigue. I've been driving trucks for over a decade, mostly long hauls across the southern states. You get used to the emptiness, the endless stretches of highway. My GPS showed a rest stop a few miles ahead, not one of those big, well-lit plazas with food courts and showers. Just a small roadside pull-off, a cracked parking lot, a couple of vending machines, and a single restroom building surrounded by dark pine trees. When I pulled in, there wasn't a single other vehicle around. The lot was empty, the only light coming from two flickering yellow lamps. The air was bitter cold, and as soon as I stepped out, I noticed how quiet it was. No wind, no cars on the highway, not even the sound of crickets. I grabbed my jacket and walked toward the restroom building. From the outside, it looked run down but functional. Graffiti on the walls, a cracked window near the door. I pushed it open, and that's when I noticed something strange. The smell. It wasn't the usual stale air and cleaning products you get at roadside bathrooms. This was metallic, like blood, and something sweet, almost overpowering, that made my stomach churn. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. The men's room had 3 stalls, 2 urinals, and a grimy mirror over a sink that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. I headed toward the far stall, but as I walked past the first one, I noticed the door was shut, and under the gap, there were bare feet. I froze. The feet weren't moving. Whoever it was stood perfectly still, toes pale and slightly curled. I slowed down, instinctively glancing at the door, but whoever was inside didn't make a sound. I stepped back, heart picking up a beat. That's when I noticed something on the floor near the sink. White chalk dust scattered around. I followed the trail with my eyes and saw faint markings near the base of the stalls. Symbols, circles, and crude shapes drawn hastily on the tiles. My gut screamed at me to leave. I turned and started toward the door, but before I reached it, I heard something behind me, whispering. It was coming from the closed stall. I froze again. The whispering wasn't in English. It was low, rhythmic, like a chant. I didn't wait to find out what they were saying. I bolted for the door and swung it open. That's when I saw them. At least 6 figures standing at the edge of the tree line, all in dark, hooded cloaks. They weren't moving, just watching me. The nearest lamppost flickered once, twice, and went out. I ran, sprinting back to my truck. I could feel them watching me, but I didn't dare look back. My hands shook as I fumbled with my keys and climbed in behind the wheel, slamming the locks down. As I started the engine, I saw movement in my side mirror. One of the hooded figures was now standing closer, maybe 20 feet away. I floored it, gravel spraying behind me, and tore out of the rest stop. I didn't stop until I was 50 miles down the highway, parked at a busy truck plaza with bright lights and cameras everywhere. My heart wouldn't slow down. I finally called 911, and the dispatcher said they'd send a unit to check. I stayed up in my cab, doors locked, chugging bad coffee, too wired to even think about sleeping. Sometime after 3, exhaustion finally won. I must have dozed off right there in the driver's seat. I woke to my phone buzzing around 6 in the morning. It was the dispatcher. He said they'd checked the entire rest stop. Nothing. No footprints. No markings. Not a single sign anyone had been there. But I know what I saw. I don't stop at lonely rest areas anymore. I'd rather risk a ticket for pulling off on a highway on-ramp than step foot in one of those places again. Because every time I think back to that night, I can still see those pale feet under the stall door and those hooded figures waiting in the dark. And I can never forget that spine-tingling chanting. There's a stretch of road in Goa, India, that locals whisper about, Betakal. It cuts through dense forest between Boream and Ponda, and even in daylight, it feels heavy, watchful. At night, drivers say strange things happen there, but no one ever gives you details straight, just warnings to keep your eyes on the road and drive fast. I've always been a careful driver, especially on the long hauls through India's back roads. About 5 years ago, I was on a midnight run from Mumbai to Margao. Part of that drive took me through the Betakal stretch. The road was utterly I just wanted the run over with. That's when I saw her. I spotted her a few 100 meters away, just a shape in the beam of my headlights. At first, I thought it was someone squatting, or maybe an animal crouched in the road. But as I closed the distance, my stomach dropped. She wasn't crouching at all. She was standing perfectly still. It was a woman. She stood barefoot in the dead center of the road, wearing a pale sari that looked gray in the glow of my headlights. Her head hung low, long hair hiding her face. She didn't move as I slammed the brakes, the truck lurching, trailer groaning under the sudden stop. I leaned out the window, shouting, "Madam, are you all right?" Nothing. I honked the horn. The blast echoed through the forest, but she didn't flinch. Then she screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was sharp and piercing, a sound that seemed to cut through the night air and into my bones. I clamped my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes shut against the noise. When I opened them, she was gone. One blink, and the road ahead was empty. I didn't think. I slammed the truck into gear and shot forward, the tires screeching as I tore down that empty stretch of road. My pulse was roaring in my ears, drowning out even the growl of the engine. Then I thought I saw movement in my rearview mirror. I glanced up, squinting into the glass, and that's when I saw. She was there, sitting in the narrow sleeper space behind my seat. Her head was bowed, hair draped forward like a curtain, hands clasped neatly in her lap. She sat so still, she looked like she'd been there the whole drive. I froze, foot easing off the accelerator. The second I blinked, she was gone. I drove like a man possessed, eyes locked on the road ahead, barely daring to blink. By the time I rolled into a brightly lit petrol station, my nerves were shot. I killed the engine, stumbled out, and ordered a cup of chai from the attendant. My hands were trembling so badly I almost spilled it. When I told him what happened, he just nodded, like he'd heard it all before. "Beta call," he said softly. "You're lucky. Most drivers don't see her in time, and they crash. Some say she's the spirit of a woman killed in a hit-and-run years ago, left alone on the roadside until it was too late. Others think it's older than that, something tied to this forest before the road was even built." He gestured to a small shrine near the pumps, covered in marigolds, incense, and flickering lamps. We offer prayers when we pass, or at least honk as a sign of respect. Villagers warn, don't slow down, don't look back. She vanishes when you try to approach. That's how she lures you in. I stood there for a long time, staring back at the dark road I'd come from. Because once you see her, you never forget.